Osio Nagad, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. My name is Gayle Ross and I am Cherokee. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation, second largest native tribe in America, second only to our Navajo brothers and sisters in the Southwest. Now, the Cherokee people were originally from the Smoky Mountains in America, North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, North Alabama. But many, many years ago, in the 1830s, when Andrew Jackson was president and my great-great-great-grandfather, John Ross, was principal chief, we were forcibly moved away from our beautiful mountain homeland to west of the Mississippi, what was then called Indian Territory, but is northeast Oklahoma today. The 14 northeasternmost counties in Oklahoma are the Cherokee Tribal Jurisdictional Area, and our capital is in Tahlequah. Now, Earth Day is a very special celebration, so I thought I'd begin by telling you the story of how our mountains were formed. You see, in the beginning days of the world, everything was water. There was no land at all, and all creatures that lived above the sky vault, this polished blue stone that curves from horizon to horizon. But it was beginning to get crowded in the upper world, and Uneklana, creator, said he would make a home in the middle world. So one by one, birds began to fly. Each day, a different bird would leave the land above, fly down to this middle world, and fly in all four directions. And then they would return and say, no, there's nothing there but water. And then the little water beetle, she flew down. And when she had flown in all four directions, she was tired. And so she rested there, floating on the surface of the water. And as she did, she suddenly wondered what was underneath the water. So she gathered all her strength, dove and swam to the bottom of the sea, and there was mud there. So she scooped up one tiny little handful of mud and brought it back and set it floating on top of the water. And then she returned to the world above. And that little handful of mud that the little water beetle carried that day began to stretch and grow until it became this continent that we walk upon. But it was still soft, soft mud, like the ocean floor. You couldn't walk on the land. And so once again, the birds began to fly. Every day, a different bird would fly down from the world above and fly in all four directions, and one by one they would return to say that no, the earth was still too soft. And then it was Buzzard's turn to fly. And when Buzzard had flown in all four directions and found that the earth was still soft, he grew angry and impatient. And he began to fly very close to the earth, pushing the air with his wings, drying out the land. And when he came to Cherokee country, he was tired, and he flew a little too close to the earth. And his wings began to strike the earth, and there the valleys were carved. And where his wings rose, the tall mountains grew. And so the homeland of the Cherokee people were those beautiful mountains that Buzzard made that day. Now, all creatures came down from the world above to make of this middle world a home. And there were many things that had to be done. The very first, the people went to Grandmother's son, who lives above the sky vault, and every day she agreed to slip under the eastern edge of the sky vault and walk a path through the heavens, bringing her light and her warmth to the world. And her brother, Uncle Moon, he brought his soft and gentle light to the evening sky. But even with Grandmother's sun in the heavens by day and Uncle Moon smiling at night, the world was still cold and dark. There was no fire. Now thunder lives in the west, controls the wind and the rain and the lightning. He saw that fire would make the lives of the people much better, but it was not a gift to be given lightly. It must be earned. And so he sent lightning to strike a hollow tree on an island in the middle of a great lake. And the first fire was kindled there in the base of that tree. Now, everyone gathered on the shores of the lake. Everyone wanted to be remembered as the bringer of fire. And they let Bear go first. After all, Bear was the biggest and the strongest. But when he had swum to the island, he saw a split in the tree and he could see the flames inside. So he squeezed himself into that tree and he began to cough and choke. And before he could squeeze his way back out of that tree, he had burned black from the tip of his nose to the tip of his tail. And the bear in the Smoky Mountains is black to this day. And he returned without the fire. Next, the people said the wisest should go, and that was Grandmother Owl. She flew across to the island, and she landed on top of that tree and looked down. Just as a gust of hot smoke and ash blew up through that tree like it was a chimney, and Grandmother Owl's eyes were burned, and the ashes made great white rings on her face. And she returned without the fire. And she wears those white rings to this day. Then the little racer snake was chosen. He was very swift. He swam across to the island. But when he went in the bottom of the tree, now there was a bed of dark coals burning, and he was burned black before he could make his way back outside that tree. Many creatures tried and failed, and then the people heard one tiny voice speaking up. It was the little water spider, the one that does that dance on the rivers and the streams. Everyone laughed at her because she was so small. But she insisted that she had the right to try, and so they let her go. She danced her way to the island, and she didn't rush in as the others had done. She sat down outside that tree and began to spin her web thread around and around and around until she had made a little tiny bowl. She tied that bowl on her back, and reaching in, she took one tiny coal of fire, placed it in her bowl, and danced back to the people. And they say from that tiny little coal that Grandmother Spider carried on that day were all 7 sacred fires of the Cherokee lit. Now, sacred fire burned in the townhouses of the 7 Cherokee peace towns, tended at all times, never allowed to go out, every year at green corn dance time, when the world is made new. The old fire is swept away from the hearth, a new fire is laid, but it is lit very carefully with coals from the sacred fire the year before. So you see, in that way, that living fire has been handed down from one generation to the next. When we made that long, long journey, There were those who carried coals from the sacred fire. They're still burning down in the hills of northeast Oklahoma. And when you see that little tiny spider today, she's very popular. Her drawing is one of the Cherokee artists' most beloved symbols. That little spider still has that white ring on her back. It's her badge of honor. And it's there so that we remember that the greatest gifts don't always come from the biggest or strongest or wisest or bravest or swiftest. Sometimes they come from the smallest and gentlest of our animal brothers and sisters. Wado.